Hi, welcome to the Antiquity Tier List-Apalooza. I'm Civilized Raccoon, and I'm going to be walking you through some of the Antiquity Age Civs, well, all of them actually, and some of the lists that we have come to love in looking at these guys and trying to evaluate how useful they are in the game. Now, there are a lot of great tier lists out there already, so I guess I have to ask, what are you doing here? Well, I'm going to try and summarize what those lists have said, keeping in mind that they've been made over a span of 6 months or so, and changes in the game mechanics have altered some assessments over time. In other words, we're going to do a meta analysis. Okay, I'm scaring some of you off already, I can tell. But we only have 7 lists to work from. So this is not exactly a scientific study. What I've done is I've taken 7 lists from 7 online Civ 7 influencers and sort of compiled an averaging of what they've had to say of the different civs. So look, here's a rundown of where each civ has placed on in each tier list. And you'll see it as a series of letters after each civilization. For example, when we look at Axum, we see that the people who've been making the tier lists have given it an A listing, another A listing, and then a B, 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 and B listing. So overall, not terrible. Seemed people evaluated it. These are kind of in chronological order in which these tier lists appeared. So initially, it got a couple of higher ratings and then was kind of relegated to the B tier consistently. So Axiom has kind of bounced around a tiny bit. Now we have an S plus tier. We're not going to be using that because these tier list makers didn't use it. So Axiom has been in this range more or less, mainly in B. Then we have Carthage. You can see it's got a B, C, an A, an S, a C, a D, an S. Wow. Okay. So I'm not going to try and replicate that. I'd sort of get carpal tunnel doing that. But you can see Carthage has been all over the place because I think there are a lot of different play styles and people don't quite know how to assess it. The lowest assessment here is a D, and the highest, there are 2 S tier assessments at the very highest rating. So Carthage seems to mean very different things to different people. So we'll have to figure out what to do with that as we go along. Then we have Egypt. Where's Egypt here? I just saw it. There you are. So Egypt. Now, Egypt has consistently gotten D's and C's. With the new buff to food, it seems to be upgraded to the C's because it usually ends up on a navigable river somewhere, and there's a little more food to be had. So it's bounced around a little bit. It's been pretty consistent in this range here. And then we have Greece. Greece right here. Let's see, it's been rated A, B, A, S, A. So really, its lowest ranking is at a B, and its highest ranking as at an S. In fact, one tier list maker put it as the best Antiquity Civ, which, well, I'll come back to that, I think. But I might agree with that one, and that would put both of us as outliers, really. But anyway, it's been in the S and A range more or less most of the time. And then we have the Han. Now, they're a little bit up and down. They've been ranging from the C to the A. And it really depends, I think, on, well, I don't know. I'm unclear myself on where I would put them if I were making a tier list and I wasn't a coward hiding behind other people's tier lists. But we will get to my tier lists eventually. I don't know. I mean, they seem to get different reactions from different people, and it's hard to assess exactly why they have this bit of a range. Nobody has picked them as the best, and nobody has picked them as the worst, on the other hand. So you have that to work with. The Khmer looks like Khmer, pronounced like Khmer. Now, they have been getting pretty consistent rankings. Their highest ranking is a B at one point, and there's a C, but then there's a whole bunch of Ds, and one tier list maker actually added an F category. Well, we could use the E category here as our F category. So overall, not all that highly ranked. So we can take that away from this analysis. The Maya are pretty simple, according to the tier makers. The Maya have been ranked S tier by everybody, even after they were nerfed and some of their science bonuses were reduced a bit. People still really like the Maya, so that's a consistent thing that comes out of this. The Mississippians have bounced around a little bit, as you can see there. One person ranked them as A early on, but then somebody else ranked them as C early on, and then B. And then, since the change in food, they've been ranked S or A very consistently, and I suspect that would continue. So they were a Civ that was very much changed in the second last update, I think, where they got a serious food reprieve. Definitely helped them overall. Persia. Persia started off as everybody's darling of the conquest type of victory, and with an A assessment, but then early on got a C, and then, an F, I'm sorry, an F, then an A, then a D, 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 D. So they're consistently ranked really low. Now, when you look at them with their +2 settlement limit and everything, you think, wow, this is maybe set up to be one of the ideal conquest civs. Yeah, but there's not a lot else to recommend them, according to the tier list makers. So that's why they are consistently ranked a lot lower now than they initially were. Rome is like the model of consistency, aside from the Maya. You can see B, B, S, well, little range there. A, B, A, B. Wow, it's turning into a sonnet rhyme scheme. You can tell my poetry background here. They're consistently ranked high-ish. Is it safe to say that? Is high-ish a thing? And sorry, I'm doing this a little bit out of alphabetical order. I forgot about the Moria. The Moria, they are really, where are they? I've lost them here. Okay, here they are. C, B, C, A, B, B, A. So everything from A to C. So in this range. So they're either a good Civ or not all that great. And I think people don't know how to rank Moria. And maybe after our looking at these civs today, we'll have some better idea where we might place them. Because I'm going to do things a little bit differently. Nothing all that drastic or amazing. But I want to also add here that I'm doing this partly inspired by the addition of Assyria to Antiquity Civs. It's not reflected in the icons here. Sorry, I don't know how to create my own icons. I'm pretty pathetic technologically speaking. But if they were here, I would drag them probably, because nobody's made a tier list that I've seen yet that includes them, none of the influencers anyway. But they seem to be pretty high on them, and I kind of like them myself. And they refer to them often as S tier, or at least upper A tier. So the Assyrians have some pretty positive buzz about them right now. Maybe though, and I'll just add a note of caution here, that's because they're the new kids in town. There's some of that effect going on, I think. But what I think we'll do is we'll look at, we've got some idea of where these would ultimately end up. You know, we see that the Greeks probably A tier. The Maya overall consistently, S tier. Rome, hard to say, B, A. They're in that dance. Let's put them on A for the moment. The Mississippians, I feel like a teacher who sees a student vastly improve and they want to discount all their earlier low grades. Um, I think the Mississippians are consistently ranked either high A or S tier. And for now, I'm going to put them up in the S tier because they're ranked consistently higher than the Romans or the Greeks. So either high A tier or S tier. So let's give the Maya some company up there. Um, and then who else would we? The Moria, like I say, kind of marooned in that middle. Uh, the Khmer marooned down here. Same with the Egyptians, although maybe not quite as low as the Khmer. Khmer, sorry, I'm mispronouncing it now. um, Persia down here. A lot of people putting it dead last, by the way. Uh, you can't, obviously, I didn't show the tier list because I want you to go and look at the tier list yourselves. I'll be providing the links down below in the comments. So I want you to go see them. I don't want it to reveal any spoilers of who said what. Carthage, I don't know where to put Carthage. Somewhere in the middle, I guess, averaging out. I'm going to put the Han at B here on average. And Axum, what did I say about Axum? Oh, yeah, so A or B. Well, let's give the Han some company here, except maybe we'll put Axum right in front of the Han. So that's kind of where things add up right now. I might put Assyria right here, but those are the players. Now, I'm going to do a few other things in addition to this. We're going to do what others have done with previous Civ games and assess these Civs by their usefulness towards specific victory conditions, which I don't think has really been done yet by any of these guys. So I just want to, start us off on that path because we're going to be doing more of that as the game progresses. So this, in our case, this will mean era legacy paths because we're only going to be looking at antiquity because these guys only last that long. So I guess we'll start with the militaristic civs. Now I'm going to put everybody down here for the moment. I don't think we're going to be using the E tier. Okay. Not to give away many secrets. We'll put them down here. And we'll look at the militaristic civs. Now, what I've done is I've gone with their labeling. If they're labeled militaristic, then we call them militaristic. So, of course, we have Assyria, which I don't have. And I apologize again. We have Persia. We have Rome. We have, who else do we have? Carthage. The Moria. And Persia, Rome, Syria, Carthage, Moria. I should have, who do I not have? Oh, Assyria. I don't have Assyria. Right. And I've added a couple of off-label ones just to sort of keep us honest. Civs that tend to be used militaristically at times well, mainly because there's some special units they have. So let's go through these. There's an abundance of solid contenders here. And I'm not discounting the military capabilities of any of these guys. Like the Han, I think are more defensive, but they have some militaristic abilities. But here are the contenders that I've got so far. Now, we could be reductionists and just choose the Civs with the biggest settlement limit increases. So that would include Assyria with +2, Persia with +2, and Rome with +2. Now, I'm just putting these here so we can differentiate them from the other four. So here's the thing. Is that enough to make a Civ qualify as militaristic. It's certainly expansionistic. You've got lots of room to expand with the extra settlement limit, but is it enough to make you militarily dominant? And so I want to talk about that in looking at each of these Civs. Excuse me. Assyria, we'll start with alphabetically here, is, like I say, the new kid on the block, but seems to be what everyone wishes Persia was. It has more personality as a Civ, taking over cities and essentially gaining technology with every city it takes over, because that's the only way it can get a lot of, well, for the most part, it can get codices in this age. That might be affecting people's assessments. It's kind of fun right now. So does that mean it's the best militaristic Civ? I don't know. Let's look at the other guys. Carthage can build up towns quickly and has a strong cavalry unit, but its economic strengths are significantly greater. And can it assemble a military as fast as it can assemble towns? And I don't necessarily think so. So is Carthage the best choice here for a top militaristic Civ? The Morea has a great cavalry unit. I love their elephants. Sorry, I've forgotten the name of their unit right now. And it can mitigate the extra settlement penalties. It only gets a +1 with all its happiness. So you want the extra settlement limits to offset the increased happiness if you have more and more settlements. If you go over your limit, the Morea can offset that with increased happiness. But is that enough to make it a strong military power? I don't know. I mean, my heart always votes with elephants, honestly. But I think happiness has been underrated. And I think Morea has been underrated overall as a result of that, if that makes any sense. So I don't want to eliminate it just because it doesn't have a +2 in terms of settlement limit, increased settlement limit. The Maya, well, the Maya are included on this list because they have a great scout unit that actually has offensive ability and can also set traps for the opponents. So, it's hard to fight novelty. And that has definitely attracted people to the Maya as an offensive power. And it has so much strength with science, and it can usually get the technological drop on its opponents, and that means the military drop as well. So that's why I've included it here. And then you have the Mississippians, kind of a decent all-round civilization that could be considered everybody's having everybody's favorite antiquity unit, the Burning Arrow. The Burning Arrow is powerful offensively. It's powerful defensively. Just put it inside some walls. Have fun trying to take that city. It's pretty cool. And like I said, it's a well-rounded Civ that's been improved since the food buff. But it only has the +1 settlement limit. And is it better on defense than on offense, like the Han? And I think it's a little better on offense than the Han is. But that's the debate. And who do we go with here? And then, of course, you have the Persians with their +2. They have a unique commander and bonus and a unique infantry unit. Although the infantry is not favored so far in this game. It's considered the weakest military unit. So maybe that's not as big an advantage as we might have thought originally with Persia. Then you have the Gate of All Nations, which is a great defensive wonder. It gives you a defensive bonus against attackers, which you're going to have a lot of if you're attacking other people. So that's good. And yeah, I don't know. We've got Rome then. And it can wow you with culture and take your cities in a flash. And it's got a commander that gets a free bulwark promotion. You get free infantry in newly founded settlements. but it has very strong incentives towards culture and towards town specialization. And you almost feel that if it went the military way, it would be wasting a lot of potential. Um, and if you're trying to get multiple legacy paths completed in Antiquity, Rome is actually one of the better bets to do that. Um, but it has a great military. So there you go. How do we place these guys? Now, this is me doing this placement. I'm not entirely basing it on the overall tier list that I've seen, but I don't know. I mean, I do want to go with the new kid on the block, and I would place um, Assyria in the S tier, although we don't have them. Just imagine them up there going, ha ha, we win again. Um, and honestly, I want to give the edge to Rome. I would put Rome at least an A tier. I think they would be my second pick. Um, Despite the fact that they have other skills, they have a lot of military advantages that I think people have been overlooking. And it works well together with other aspects of their build. And third, I think it'd be wrong just to say Persia is terrible because it doesn't have any personality. If you want a conquering civilization, it's what it does best. It's its thing. Um, and then after that, I don't know. I think I kind of like the Mississippians over some of the more um, like labeled military powers. Um, and I think the Moria have been underestimated. And I think that's unfortunate. I think happiness can mitigate increased settlement limit. I think you can make them bigger without making them unhappier. And I think they have some of the power to do that. Um, After that, I would probably. I'm just not a big Carthage fan when it comes to military might, but they do have the potential to expand quite quickly and get the drop on their opponents. But I would put the Maya ahead of them in terms of getting the drop scientifically with technology and better military units. The rest of these guys, I'm not going to rank. I'm just going to rank our main contenders here. Um, and then I think we'll move on to uh, our economic tier list. So we'll move these guys down and prepare for that. Now, in terms of the economic tier list that I want to do here, I'm going to include the Kamai and who was it again? The Romans as off-label potential economic powerhouses. But they're going to be the familiar players here. We're going to have the Aksum, Carthage, where are you? I really need to get to know my symbols better. Egypt, and these are the ones that are all labeled economic powers. Um, Mississippians, of course, and let me think. Am I missing somebody? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, that's it. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, I'm missing one. Oh, Persia, actually, ironically. Okay. So let's go through these. Axum has unique trade ships and an increased trade range and increased gold for coastal cities and from wonders. And the Howlet improvement brings in gold. But for all that gold, there are no extra resource slots anywhere. And you kind of need the extra resource slots if you're going to win the trade battles for the economic victory in the Antiquity Age. So that puts it at a bit of a disadvantage, despite its economic strength. Now, Carthage gets Where are you, Carthage? Oh, right here. Carthage gets increased naval range and increased resource caps for capitals and the capital and towns. That's great. But the town limitation is significant. I mean, you can only increase what a town can hold by so much. But maybe all that matters is it increases it just enough for the win. And I've seen people do wonders with the Carthaginian capital in terms of, if you get enough camels, you can fit enough resources in any city or town. So there's that, well, not town, but any city. So there's that. You could ride on the back of your capital and maybe make it to victory just on the basis of that. Then we have Egypt. Now, Egypt has some gold increases and will spawn by navigable rivers, which is handy for trade. But there are no real trade improvements that help it, and no resource bonuses. So, resource slot bonuses. That puts it at a bit of a disadvantage. The Kamai, they have a unique merchant immune to flood damage and wet tile effects, and they get some more gold from specialists. But sadly for them, there's nothing really needle moving here that I think would give them an edge over even just the others we've looked at so far. Then you have the Mississippians. Now, the Mississippian, they have their Monk's Mound wonder, which adds resource capacity to the city that builds it. That's good. It has a unique merchant that gains gold per resource received by trade. That's good. But once you get past that, you don't really have much there that's going to guarantee a win. So it's not weak economically, but it's not overly strong either. And then you have Persia. Persia has a few ways to add gold, but that's about it. Nothing big for an economic victory. I put them on here because they at least have a little something. They could maybe get you a financial victory, but that's about it. And then we have Rome at last. It has several ways to increase gold as well, but again, there are no points for a purely financial victory. So these guys, yeah, I put them in to distract you. They don't really have a strong chance of winning an economic victory unless they're just dominating militarily. And that's one way to get an economic victory as well as a military victory. But I'm just looking at, well, who could win you just the economic victory? And that's not easy. I would have to say that I would give the nod to Carthage here, despite its, limitations. I've seen Carthage pull off some very interesting and amazing economic victories based on just the capital itself. After that, I would definitely go with the Mississippians, just because of their stronger all-round base. I think they could accomplish it because everything sort of comes together with the Mississippians. Axum, great trade unit, increased trade range. You can't discount trade range. In fact, I would almost put them ahead of the Mississippians just because of the increased trade range. The more trades you can make, the more resources you get. It's just that simple. Egypt, less so, but still pretty decent, not terrible. I like them here. The Kamai, not great, but still viable. These guys, not really, and I didn't really discuss these guys at all in economic terms. But that would be my economic tier list. So let's break this down again. We're going to look at a scientific tier list. And that's going to look a little bit different, obviously. I don't have any off-label civs for this one. There weren't any really close contenders other than the obvious ones. Now, Assyria is one of them. Again, the new kid with some science synergy with military conquest. And we also have uh, the Han. Where are you? Oh, yeah, there you are. So we have the Han and Assyria. We have the Khmer. I'm giving them every chance, you know. We have the Maurya. There you are. We have the Maya. And I just want to make sure oh, yeah. So if you count Assyria, we have five, and that's it. So not a ton of contenders in the science field. Um, Assyria, as I alluded to, has the synergy of conquest and the acquisition of technology and codices. But can it win a scientific victory without conquest? I'll confess with you, I'm experimenting on this right now, behind the scenes. Not as we speak here, but I've been trying this out. And I'm not saying that makes it weaker, but it does mean its scientific victory is dependent upon another type of victory. And that, to me, is a bit of a knock against it in terms of scientific victories. So, where would I put them? I don't know yet. The Han has several science bonuses. And once you unlock the unique civilian unit and you get the right great people, you could run away with science. Some of those units are really good, but that's all late era stuff, and it doesn't get you to the front of the line soon enough, maybe, or maybe it's just enough so you win right at the end of the age. That's unclear. The Khmer has increased codex slots for the palace, but not much else. Yeah, you thought I was going somewhere else with that, but I wasn't. Yeah, that's all it has. Um, the Moria has some science bonuses linked to happiness, but probably not enough to dominate in tech. So, not to dominate anyway. Not bad, but not great. The Maya has some good science adjacencies with vegetated tiles for the palace and the Kuna unique building. And its happiness buildings can gain some science. And completing civics brings in science. That's the nerfed part of their build, I think. It used to be a higher bonus for that. And the only problem is there's a lot of emphasis on getting the right terrain. They're good with science if they don't get the right terrain. They're great if they do. So, this is the thing. I've got to balance this out. The Assyrians, I think, have to go somewhere up here if we're just basing it on science. I think the Assyrians get some bonuses for um, just showing up and tearing things down and getting the tech. That's fun. They get some fun points for that. I want to put them at least A tier in terms of this. And then the Maya, because like I said, even on a bad science day for the Maya, it's a good science day. Um, at their worst, they're still pretty good. And then after that, probably, well, do I want to go with the Han? Um, I think if the Han gets lucky, if the Han takes in a lot of science towards the end of the age through the special people, then yeah, it can do quite well. And the Maurya, yes, with a lot of happiness buffing and extra cities. And yeah, again, its science is dependent on something else, just like Assyria's is, and that's happiness. So it loses maybe some points there. And the Khmer, I just can't rate them higher than C tier for this. So if you have the Assyrians right here, I don't give anybody super grades for science, although it's tempting to bump these two guys up there. I'm not going to, not just yet. Maybe next time, depending on how things change with the game. So now we're going to try the cultural game. And then I'll have a few comments on some other metrics and some overall conclusions about this. Now, in this case, we're going to add a couple, oh, well, I just put them there. The Han and the Maya as kind of off label cultural civs. We have the Aksum, we have Egypt, we have Greece. Oops. Actually, I don't want to put everybody all the way up there. Let's put them down here. Okay. And again, doing this alphabetically. The Maya, I already got there, and Rome. So we have 6, 4 of whom, or 2 of whom I've added just because. Let's take a look at them. The Aksum, where are you? The Aksum unlock increased culture for trade routes. They have a culture adjacency with the Howlet unique improvement, and they get increased cultural adjacency to coast tiles. That's once you have unlocked everything. I should be saying that with every discussion here, but there's not a lot of wonders that are going to come out of this. Yes, you'll increase your cultural yield. There's nothing directly linked to improving your wonder builds, which, after all, is what the cultural victory is all about in Antiquity. So, not awesome. But then on the other hand, by way of contrast, you have Egypt, who, well, just about their everything is aimed at wonder bonuses. The Mastaba unique building provides some culture. You have a unique civilian unit in the Great People that offer wonder and culture bonuses, if you're lucky, because they don't all do that. But they come late in the age. So again, a couple of caveats there. You got to be lucky a little bit, and you have to hope for a win later in the age, as a rule, especially if you're playing at deity level. A lot of activity at the end there can really pull you through. Then we have Greece. Now, Greece can unlock culture bonuses for every settlement that it's suzerain over. The Acropolis buildings have culture bonuses. You can unlock some great people with some culture bonuses, but again, late in the age. So how consistent is Greeks' culture advancement and move towards building wonders? They don't have anything directly related to wonders that's significant. Then you have the Han. Now, the Han aren't considered a culture oriented civ, but you do have one great person that offers a culture bonus, and you have the Great Wall that provides a culture bonus for every section of that wall. So if you wanted to go wall happy, you could build up a little bit of culture. Now, is that enough to really make a difference to get that kind of a win? I actually don't think so. But still, it's fun to think about. Now, with the Maya, culture comes from completing techs, from happiness buildings that can gain culture, and there are some possible adjacency bonuses with one of its unique buildings. There's nothing overwhelming, but there's a trickle. There's a trickle of culture that we see here. Now, with Rome, other than being a military power, Rome is all about culture. The Roman infantry and specialized towns bring in some culture, and the Forum Quarter adds more. And then you have the Colosseum wonder that adds culture again. Now, is this enough to make it a cultural powerhouse? Does it help it make wonders faster, like Egypt's direct bonuses? I think those two are the competitors for the top slot. But overall, I think culture is possibly a little weak, maybe like science so far in antiquity. Some people might disagree with me about the science, but culture so far hasn't been overwhelming. And for example, people have not been too enthused about Egypt, even though it seems like the obvious contender for best Civ to get a cultural victory because of its wonder bonuses. And yet, that doesn't seem to be the case in people's evaluations. So, where do I put them? I still have to give the nod to Egypt because of those wonder bonuses, but Rome is pretty strong. I mean, it's right on its heels because it has a number of culture bonuses. Behind that, I guess I would put Greece and then maybe Axum. Um, and then the Han, just for fun. And the Maya, I could surprise me culturally speaking. I wouldn't be stunned if they won a culture victory because they're all round pretty decent. Um, Now, I want to talk to you about a few other metrics. Obviously, we have cultures that are expansionistic and diplomatic. So, what do we make of them? With expansionistic cultures, we have the Khmer, the Mississippian. I'm not going to spend as much time on these because they're not victory condition wins. So let's see what we have here. We have the Khmer and the Mississippian. This isn't even in alphabetical order. Rome, Carthage, Egypt, Assyria, and Persia. Out of these, I think the best expansionist powers are Rome. Rome is one of them. And Carthage certainly is, because of its ability to expand quickly. And the Mississippians, because of their food and their ability to grow very quickly. I think you can't overlook them. Um, I think in terms of other cultures, the Khmer are supposed to be expansionists. They're not that great at it. Some of the other ones I mentioned aren't considered expansionist cultures, but they're better. Like Carthage, for example, is an economic military power, but it's definitely expansionist, more so than maybe even military. Um, Egypt would seem to have some good food bonuses, but I don't know how expansionistic it is. I think these are the three that if they develop a victory condition around expansionism, I think you would have to give the nod to these three, and I don't know what order I would put them in. Boy, oh boy, they're all at least A tier in terms of growing your civilization. Um, and I would call it a three-way tie because I don't know where I would go in terms of picking one over the others here. In terms of a diplomatic victory, if we get one of those like we have in Civ 6, I think you would see, hands down, my favorite Civ, my comfort Civ, um, would be an S tier Civ in this case. And it's an S tier Civ in my heart. It would be Greece. Followed somewhat behind by the Han, who I think would be an excellent diplomatic Civ. But Greece just takes the ribbon here. And I don't think there are really strong other contenders. The Maya, sort of, as kind of an all round Civ. And Rome, again, for the same reasons. But I think Greece and the Han, and that's why I think the Han and Greece are somewhat underestimated at this point in making tier lists about the best Civs, because one of their best skills so far is being used to leverage other types of victories, which is fine. I like it that way. That's great. But if it ever becomes part of a victory condition, then I think you're going to see assessments of both of these Civs go up. Now, another assessment, another way of measuring, another metric, is happiness. And who do we think of when we think of happiness? If that were to become a way to measure a civilization's success, and I want to talk about these alternative metrics at a later date in another video. But if there were a happiness metric, the Moria would be like in the Antiquity Age would be the hands down main contender for top Civ for that type of victory condition. But we're not there yet. And I don't see a lot of other contenders here that could really add a ton of happiness. There are some that add a little bit of happiness, but none add happiness at every turn. So I think you could see a reassessment of the Moria if that new victory condition somehow, an unnamed victory condition, were to come to pass. I'm doing a little bit of crystal balling here, so I hope you'll excuse me. I'm making this stuff brief. On the other hand, I did want to talk a little bit more, and I'm going to conclude with this stuff, about some of these guys. The Greece, the Han, the Khmer maybe less so. No, let's leave them out of it for now. I picked on them enough. The Moria, and the Maya, and the Mississippians. Where's the Maya? Okay. And maybe Rome as well. Now, these are my contenders for not really a victory condition, I gotta say. These are my contenders for the most balanced civs. And I know there's a lot of them, so maybe we can suss out who the most balanced ones are. I think it's safe to say that most people would argue, since they seem to top out a lot of tier lists, that these two are the most balanced. And I probably would agree with that, but I think, I don't know. I still want to root for Greece. What can I say? I'm terrible that way. I might put the Mississippians ahead of the Mayans at this point. Maybe because I like the Burning Arrow more than the Scout unit of the Mayans, but they're both awesome. So, and I would have to put Greece right after that, and then Rome, and then the Han and the Moria. These would be the most well-balanced civs. And I wanted to do this category because if you just don't know who you want to play, what type of victory you want to go for, these are civs that I think you can play and get somewhere. You can get a victory condition no matter what. I think you can do something with them no matter what you end up having to do. And I think the Mississippians and the Mayans are probably best in this category, and the Han and the Morians are a little weaker in this category, but I still think that they have potential to get you the kind of win you're looking for because of that balance. And I guess that's going to round out my tier List-Apalooza. Now, if you have any comments, if you have any disputes, if you have any things that you want to pick apart or tease apart, or if you have any further suggestions, please let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, please drop a like or a subscribe before you leave. I would appreciate it. Otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you've gotten something out of this. And please visit the tier lists of the other Civ 7 influencers and see what they have to say. They parse things out in much more detail than I have. This has been a very superficial look at these civs in terms of victory conditions, but they go through each aspect of these civs in a lot more detail, and their analysis is much finer, I think. So I hope you appreciate it once you've looked at them. Thank you very much for joining me. This is Civilized Raccoon. I'll see you next time.